The Loire Valley is known for its abundance of chateaux, its endless vineyards, and its sheer beauty. It's often referred to as the Garden of France because of how fertile the soil is, how many vineyards there are, and the number of gardens. In this travel guide, we're going to show you the best things to do in the Loire Valley, including top attractions, some of its best chateaux, and some hidden gems. Today, we're going to be exploring Blois. Now, this is a great place to base yourself if you're visiting the Loire Valley because it's one of the biggest towns in the region and has a plethora of places to stay, shops and restaurants. It's a great gateway to visit nearby chateaux such as Chambord and Chenonceau, and it's also really delightful as it's full of timber framed houses as well as lovely cobbled lanes. Now, because people often ask us, we're actually filming this at the end of July, which is hard to believe because we're in jackets and jeans. When I started planning this video, we decided to film it at this period of time because it was the most likely time of the year that we would have good weather. I imagined blue skies, beautiful chateau. Well, we'll still have the beautiful chateau, but yeah, you could end up with this weather even if you come in the summer. The most beautiful building in town is undoubtedly the Chateau of Blois. This was actually the residence of the Count of Blois as well as countless kings of France. Most notably in 1429, it was here that Joan of Arc came to be blessed by the Archbishop of Reims before she went with her army to drive against the English forces who had won at a battle for Orleans the previous year. Most of the town centre of Blois is actually pedestrianised, meaning that it's very pleasant to explore on foot. And while we don't have the best luck with the weather, there are several gems to uncover, especially interior ones, which we're going to discover now. L'Abbey bookshop was established all the way back in 1837 and is sat over 5 floors in a historic building encompassing 750 metres squared of bookshop. This is actually the largest bookshop in Blois, and my favourite part had to be downstairs where you can see the vaulted ceilings. This is the Cathedral of Blois, and there's been a chapel on site dedicated to St. Pierre since the 6th century, though most of what you see today was constructed during the 16th in the late Gothic and Renaissance style. Today, the cathedral is particularly known for its beautiful stained glass windows. Close to the cathedral, you'll find the House of the Acrobats. Now, it's worth noting that when it comes to timber frame buildings, one of the easiest ways to date them is by the decor, and in this case is via the clothing of the acrobats themselves. It's thought that their building dates all the way back to the 1470s during the reign of Louis XI. Today, the carvings are just as beautiful as they would have been hundreds of years ago, and many of the details remain. Yet another building close to the cathedral that's particularly interesting is this one. It dates all the way back to the end of the 15th century, and the story goes that the family owned the houses either side of the street, and so they built a wooden bridge to link the two of them. Now it's pretty fabulous to look at. This is the Denis Papin staircase, and it's made over 120 steps. And the really unique thing about this particular staircase is that since 2013, every few years, the mural has actually been changed on it to reflect what's happening in Blois at the time. For example, a few years ago, it was an important anniversary for Leonardo da Vinci, and so the stairs were covered in a mural of the Mona Lisa. Today, it's a more floral aesthetic. And if you climb all the way to the top of the staircase, you'll be rewarded with an amazing view over Blois. Of course, the Loire Valley is pretty famous for its wines, and so we headed to a vineyard to discover more about the local tipple.
Bienvenue au domaine Le Portail à Cheverny. Je vous accueille au sein de mon domaine familial que mes beaux-parents ont acheté en 1979. Nous avons 40 hectares de vignes dans un rayon de 2 km exclusivement sur Cheverny. Les arbres qui sont plus que centenaires et le portail tout voûté, c'est le nom du domaine. Si vous voyez domaine Le Portail AIL, ça veut dire que les vins ont été produits ici à Cheverny, domaine Le Portail. On est la deuxième génération au domaine, mais ma belle-mère, elle est issue de famille de vignerons depuis 6 générations sur un autre domaine à Cours-Cheverny. Il y a très longtemps, on n'avait pas le tracteur pour travailler le sol de la vigne, on utilisait les chevaux. Et quand les épines piquaient le flanc de l'animal, on changeait de rang. Chaque année, nous produisons 250 000 bouteilles environ de vin que l'on vinifie et que l'on produit ici au domaine Le Portail. La machine va enlever la rafle, va enlever les feuilles, va mettre la rafle et les feuilles dans le champ et on va juste garder la peau, les pépins et bien évidemment le jus. Ensuite, 24-48 heures après, on repompe le jus de raisin et on va le mettre dans les cuves en inox. On peut faire le rosé à la méthode rouge, c'est-à-dire qu'on laisse tout macérer pendant quelques heures et dès qu'on a la couleur obtenue, hop, on pompe vite les jus ou alors on peut utiliser le pressoir, tout simplement.
Pourquoi est-ce que vous avez fait le choix de ne rien sous-traiter?
Parce qu'on est vraiment des passionnés. Damien est passionné entre la vigne et la cave et donc il tient à cœur à faire les deux pôles. Donc bien évidemment, il est aidé de plusieurs collaborateurs, mais c'est vraiment important pour lui de pouvoir faire toutes les étapes. À chaque étape, il y a la passion du vigneron dans la bouteille. Voilà, elle avait raison. Vous avez vu? Ça, c'est du gamay.
Quel type d'appellation est-ce que vous avez sur votre sol?
Alors, on a 3 types d'appellations. On a l'appellation Cours-Cheverny avec le fameux cépage Romorantin, le cépage de François Ier. On a également l'appellation Cheverny avec un assemblage en blanc, rosé, rouge. Donc le blanc, c'est Sauvignon Chardonnay et les rosés rouges, c'est du Pinot Noir avec du gamay. Et on a la 3e appellation, le Crément de Loire.
Et l'appellation Cheverny, c'est assez rare. Vous êtes combien à le faire?
Alors l'appellation Cheverny, c'est à peu près 800 hectares et à peu près une trentaine de vignerons. Et l'appellation Cours-Cheverny, c'est entre 70 et 80 hectares et une vingtaine de vignerons.
Souvent, quand on parle de la Loire, on pense à un vin blanc. Mais vous avez aussi le vin rouge. Quelles sont les différences entre un vin rouge ici et d'ailleurs en France?
Alors, le vin rouge de la vallée de la Loire et plus précisément de Cheverny, c'est un vin rouge très léger, très fruité, très aromatique. On veut d'abord le goût du vin et ensuite le côté boisé, le côté vanillé sur les sponfites du bois. Donc, on fait un assemblage de plusieurs fûts neufs et anciens. On a une gamme avec un vin rouge où vous pouvez accorder un peu frais. Même à l'apéritif, sans souci. 13-15 degrés, c'est super sympa. Et on a des vins rouges un petit peu plus tanniques, majoritairement Pinot Noir, qui peuvent très bien s'accorder avec une petite fricassée de champignons, par exemple.
Et comment est-ce que les gens puissent venir vous visiter?
Alors, soit en nous envoyant un email ou bien en nous téléphonant, tout simplement. On répond aux deux.
Et vous faites des visites en anglais aussi?
Yes, a little. I can try.
Château de Chenonceau is often referred to as a lady's castle, and this is probably the most famous castle in the Loire Valley because of how beautiful it is. The structure you see today was built between 1514 and 1522 on the site of a former fortified mill. This is one of the castles where if you want to get a close-up look, you have to pay to visit the grounds. This is also one of the most popular castles to visit, so it does feel a bit like a conveyor belt when you're coming in and out. And you even have to book a timed entrance slot to visit the inside, which we're going to do now. As soon as you step inside Chenonceau, you're greeted by sheer opulence. Built in the 1500s, it's nicknamed the Lady Château because powerful women like Diane de Poitiers and Catherine de Medici shaped its fate. During World War II, one end of the chateau was in Nazi-occupied France and the other in Free France, and so many people were actually smuggled over the border using the chateau's famous gallery bridge. In 1576, Catherine de Medici commissioned Jean Bouillon to create a gallery on top of an existing bridge which was commissioned by Diane de Poitiers. It would be 60 meters in length and 6 meters wide. There would be 18 windows which would allow in natural light. In other words, it was the perfect ballroom. The best view of Chenonceau isn't actually from within the grounds, but if you cross the river nearby, if it's a sunny day, so obviously not like today, then you'll see lots of people kayaking and going on pleasure boats along the River Cher. If you come to the very heart of the forest, then you'll find the tomb of Madame Dupin. She died at Chenonceau in 1799 at the age of 93, and she was a prominent figure in the Enlightenment scene. She had lots of influence on the philosophers and writers of the time, and her final wish was to be buried here in the grounds of Chenonceau. Today, you'll find her tomb resting on 4 lion paws, and it's a very serene and tranquil space. If you want to experience Chenonceau without the crowds, then you'll want to come in the early evening. For example, it's just after 5 p.m. and most people have left, so the grounds are way quieter. The inside of the chateau is also quieter, and it's also the best lighting for photos. One of the most impressive aspects of the garden is the Garden of Diane. This is 12,000 meters squared, and there's all kinds of boxed shrubs, as well as an amazing view onto the chateau itself. The garden is actually protected by this raised terrace. In the case that the Cher floods, then the plants will be protected from the floodwaters. All around, there are these beautiful urns. The Russell Page Garden was created in 2018, and there's lots of animals represented here as it's meant to remind people of their childhood. It's much more modern than the rest of the gardens, but it kind of works because there's lots of different interactive activities in the grounds anyway. The chateau was actually used as a military hospital in World War I, and there's an exhibition in the grounds detailing this. The flower and vegetable garden is pretty impressive as it's comprised of 12 square plots and employs 10 gardeners full-time to grow over 100 varieties of flower, as well as 400 rose bushes. It's really lovely to walk around, particularly in the summer, because you'll get to see all of the vegetables almost ready to harvest. Today, we're going to be exploring the Château de Chambord. This was built between 1519 and 1547 and is the largest chateau of the Loire Valley. And it's even said that Leonardo da Vinci had a hand in its design. It's worth noting that this was always meant to be a hunting lodge for Francis I and was never meant to be lived in. Instead, Francis I maintained his royal residences at Amboise and Blois. The chateau is also known for its pretty unique architecture. It's French Renaissance, but blends aspects of medieval architecture, lending to a very stunning building that's famous the world over. It's worth noting that you can actually see the grounds of Chambord for free, although you do have to pay for parking. This is unlike many other chateaux where you literally can't see the chateau unless you pay entrance to the grounds. Here, you just have to pay for the chateau itself and the adjacent garden. The rest of the grounds you're free to explore. You can even rent little paddle boats on the water. We ended up getting lunch at one of the little restaurants close to the chateau, and it was surprisingly good value for money. Although Chambord looks like it's symmetrical, it's actually not, and once you get close up, you'll see all of the differences between the two sides. In total, there are around 440 rooms, 80 fireplaces, and over 280 staircases. During the visit, you'll also notice that there isn't very much furniture, and that is intentional. In times gone by, the only decor of the chateau would have been carvings as opposed to paintings, and when the king would have come to visit, they would have brought in all of the furniture from Blois or Amboise, so even during the 1500s, there was hardly any furniture in the chateau. The most impressive monument within the castle is definitely this double spiral staircase. This staircase is said to have been designed by Leonardo da Vinci himself, and is very interesting because it's two intertwining staircases, but you never meet. So if you're in a group, it's good to split up and you can see each other through these windows, but you'll never actually cross on the stairs. The only way to join your group is right at the bottom. Okay, I'm back for the rest of the visit now. Let's go and see another interesting aspect of the chateau. There are dozens of small apartments nestled within the chateau, each comprising of a similar layout, with a bedroom, private drawing room, and the like. The one we focused our visit on was that of Francois Ier himself. We also checked out the royal ceremonial apartment, which was created during the 17th and 18th centuries. Francois Ier chose the salamander as his royal emblem because in medieval and Renaissance symbolism, the salamander was associated with surviving fire and even being able to extinguish it, symbolizing strength and resilience. One of the most unique aspects of the castle has to be its rooftop. There's a set of beautiful terraces here, and lots of people liken it to a city in the sky because of the abundance of Gothic architecture, unique turrets, rooftops, and skylines. The final part of the chateau, which is included in the price of your entry ticket, are the French formal gardens. Now these look very similar to how they would have appeared in the 18th century. At that time, defences were no longer required in the way that they would have been in the past, and so the moat is only partial, the turrets and towers of the castle are purely decorative, and the gardens themselves would have just been for leisure. Montrichard is a delightful medieval town which is nestled alongside the River Cher. Here you'll find a donjon, an old château, as well as several timber-framed houses. Even the tourist office is quite delightful. It's housed within a 15th century building which is known as the House of Ave Maria, and that's because there's a carving of the Annunciation on the side of the building. In times gone by, it would have even served as a residence for the monks of the nearby Aigues-Vives Abbey. The River Cher is a gentle tributary of the Loire that winds through central France and is actually the same river that runs through Chenonceau. The best view of the chateau can undoubtedly be found along the banks of the River Cher. From here you can see the ruins of the 11th century chateau, as well as the donjon, which is a central keep, and even the ramparts. The Church of the Holy Cross is the most important church in town, and it's also really famous historically because this was the site of the marriage between Joan of France and her second cousin Louis of Orleans. Joan was born in 1464 and she was the youngest child of Louis XI together with Charlotte of Savoy. Unfortunately, she was often referred to as Joan the Lame because she was actually born with severe scoliosis. Despite this, she was betrothed to her second cousin just a few days after she was born and then married off at the age of 12 while her cousin was 14. In spite of her severe disability, she actually accomplished a lot during her life and even founded a monastic order after the annulment of her marriage. There are a number of unique activities in the region that aren't related to chateau, and something I particularly enjoyed was visiting a mushroom farm. Because of the soft stone in the area, the Loire Valley is definitely known for its quarrying. As a result, there's lots of troglodyte homes, including hotels where you can stay. And also, you can visit wine caves. But one of the more unique things to see in this area is actually these mushroom caves, where you can see 4 types of mushrooms grown. There are daily tours of the mushroom caves, but unfortunately they're only in French. If you want a guide in English, you have to just read the paper. However, it is still really fun to come down to the caves and see the 4 different varieties of mushrooms.
À l'intérieur, 120 km répartis sur 7 niveaux. Mais pendant la visite, on ne fera que 1 km de l'aller et le retour.
The lady who led the tour was really knowledgeable and explained that she's actually been harvesting mushrooms for the past 38 years. During the visit, we learned that the quarries had been used to extract tuffeau stone, a local Loire limestone that was used in the construction of houses, churches, and even some local chateaux. In Blois itself, quarrying had completely stopped by the beginning of the 20th century. I genuinely can't believe how big these caves are, and the height of them, well, the proof is that there's literally a tractor in here. The quarries were then used to grow mushrooms, and at one time there were 5 mushroom growing companies in Blois, and even a mushroom processing factory employing some 100 local residents. Due to increased prices and competitive rates from abroad, the mushroom growing companies were forced to close, and today this is the only remaining one in the village.
Alors les premiers champignons qu'on a cultivés dans ces carrières, c'est bien sûr les champignons de Paris. Et jusqu'en 2000, là, on en cueillait quand même 6 tonnes par jour.
Once upon a time, there were over 400 mushroom farms in France, and now only 20 remain. The reason this particular cave in Blois is still in business is thanks to the pied bleu mushroom.
Le pied bleu, par semaine, on va en cueillir 1 tonne. Et on travaille toute l'année avec, car on travaille avec les marchés de Rungis au Paris.
Right at the end of the visit, you're taken to a part of the quarry that's been carved out by hand by a local artist. Here you'll find lots of amazing designs, such as a hand in a wall or a cat jumping into a hole. Honestly, the level of detail here is so staggering. It's worth coming to the Mushroom Cave just to see this. Right at the end of the visit, you can actually visit the mushroom shop, making this one of the most unique souvenirs to buy in the Loire Valley. This is a little village of Chédigny, and we were recommended to come here because it's known as a garden village thanks to the abundance of houses covered in flowers. Now, the best time to come is actually in June, as this is when the roses are in bloom, but the rest of the year is quite lovely, especially July, as we get to see all of the wisteria. Luckily, there are still a few late blooming roses, and they smell quite nice too. The village is actually home to over 1,000 varieties of roses, and there are lots of flower-themed festivals throughout the year. There's also a garden you can visit, and even surrounding the church, you'll see lots and lots of flowers in bloom. So apparently this is actually a funerary slab from the 13th century, because back in the Middle Ages, you weren't allowed to bring the body inside the church until it had received a blessing. And so while waiting for the funeral service, the body would be left here so that the loved ones could come and say goodbye, and then it would receive the blessing from the priest before the funeral began. The Loire Valley is often referred to as the Garden of France because of the abundance of vineyards and gardens here. And so we've come to what is probably one of the most beautiful settings we've ever had for an afternoon coffee. I picked up the lavender latte, and the server told me that you have to eat the cream, which is lavender infused, before drinking the coffee to really get the flavor. It's so beautiful, I don't even know if I want to drink it. Wow, you really have the lavender flavor. It's really strong, but very nice. We also got this fruit cup to share, and I think it's chantilly cream with some sort of fruit coulis. In any case, it looks very tasty. This town is astonishingly beautiful. I can't believe I've never heard of it before. And one of the best things is, apart from the fact that every corner you walk around looks like a postcard, is that we're some of the only people here. There are also a few boutiques in town. So we just visited the bookshop, but there's also a boulangerie and several galleries where you can buy local souvenirs. Montrésor, population approximately 300, is translated into English as my treasure. And what a treasure this town is. In fact, it's so beautiful that it's actually listed as a member of the Association of the Most Beautiful Villages in France, and its shining star is its gorgeous chateau. Today, if you walk alongside the stream, then you'll find two top attractions. Firstly, there is this magnificent fort. This dates all the way back to the 11th century, though later crenellations were added during the 12th and 13th. To my right, there is the chateau. This was constructed in the 15th century, and then later additions were added. This one is still habitable, and the fort is obviously just in ruins. This bridge was created in around 1870 and is known as the Gardener's Bridge. It links both sides of the river, and the land either side is very fertile, hence the name. It's also worth noting that this bridge was created in the famous Eiffel Works factory. This is the Beauvais Bridge, and once upon a time it would have been the only way to reach the fort. This would have once been built out of wood and would have gone over a defensive moat. Today is one of the best viewpoints of the village. Loches is a delightful medieval town on an old trade route between Poitiers and Amboise. Today you can discover the medieval streets, which are all pedestrianised, and see this beautiful chateau. We actually came here a few days ago on market day, but we didn't have a great deal of time to film. However, during that time we had an amazing lunch at a little restaurant called Le Prosper, and we also checked out the market. Like many towns in the Loire Valley, Loches has a rich royal history, and it also has two chateaux. There's the old donjon, which is a fortified keep, and then there's a newer chateau, which is the Logis Royal. Today, the chateau has been transformed into a museum showcasing armoury throughout the centuries. All around town you'll find lots of medieval architecture, and one of the best examples of this is Port Piquois, which dates all the way back to the 15th century. Loches is known in Roman as Lucai, but the town truly started growing in around 500 when a monastery was founded by St. Urs. Between the 9th and 13th centuries, the town was owned by the Counts of Anjou. Today, you'll find lots of medieval streets, architecture, and beautiful gardens. The Loire Valley is known for its ecclesiastical history, and so today we're going to be exploring one of the most beautiful abbeys in Europe. This is Fontevraud Abbey, and it's the biggest abbey in Europe. It was founded all the way back in 1101 by Robert de Brissel, whose sarcophagus you can now actually see within the grounds of the abbey. Upon his death, he actually placed the whole community, because at that time it was both men and women, into the hands of an abbess. In time, it grew to be the largest group of contemplative nuns in Europe, and the abbey itself could accommodate up to 700 people. In fact, it was so important that in the 12th century, Eleanor of Aquitaine actually made the abbey the necropolis for the kings and queens of England. A large draw of visiting the abbey is being able to see the 4 royal tombs, including effigies of Henry II of England and of Eleanor of Aquitaine. After you've visited the 12th century Abbey Church, you'll find yourself in this beautiful set of cloisters. This was actually reconstructed at the end of the 15th century and would have been the heart of monastic life here at the Abbey. When the Abbey was used as a prison, it was actually transformed into a prison yard. Today, it's really peaceful and serene, although unfortunately, if you visit during the period of the light shows, you'll find all of these light installations, which isn't so aesthetic. Just off of the cloisters, you'll find this small room that's got lots of murals depicting the Passion of Christ. Now, what's really interesting about these specific murals is that the Bourbon nuns actually included themselves within the paintings in order to establish their importance. St. Benoit courtyard just shows how organized the abbey was. This area was reserved exclusively for sick nuns. There would have been a chapel so that the ill nuns could attend services, and there was a funerary room, and upstairs there would have been heated rooms for the sick patients. Even though you have to pay 13 euros to visit the abbey, there's actually a lot included in your ticket price. And it's also a great place to come with kids because there's lots of fun interactive activities. For example, during the summer months, there's actually a free atelier where you can learn to paint in the style of different artists. There's also ever-changing exhibitions, including in the dormitory, meaning that no two visits to the abbey will be the same. One of the most impressive buildings on site has got to be the one just behind me. Archaeological evidence suggests that it was used as a kitchen between the 12th and 16th centuries, though no one is quite sure why it was originally built. Several theories include use as a baptistry or as a funeral chapel. What we do know is that it was heavily restored in the 20th century using archaeological finds and also just vibes. It's now spectacular to look at, especially the roof with all of its beautiful carvings. Monastic life at the abbey actually ended during the French Revolution, and then in 1804 Napoleon decided that all of the unused buildings would be used as a prison, and it was used as a prison right up until the 1960s. Today you can visit the abbey for a small fee. For an extra fee you can visit the adjacent Contemporary Art Museum. Now Fontevraud is a thriving community, and the town itself is listed among one of the most beautiful towns in France. There's also a tourist office here where you can get information about local attractions, and the little village itself is completely pedestrianised. Here you'll find several churches and several restaurants. One of the most unique buildings in town is the Chapel of St. Catherine. It's particularly unique because it's home to a funerary lantern, and in times gone by, every time there would have been a death in the village, a candle would have been lit at the top of the lantern. Today it's actually privately owned, and I actually just spoke to the owner as she very kindly let us have a look at the chapel, as now the building is used for artists in residence, and so they live in a part of it and then exhibit their works in another part. You can even see the crypt and also the stairs which go up the tower. I think it's hundreds of years of dust. I'm so dusty. Chinon lies alongside the River Vienne, and it's home to around 8,000 residents. Today, its main attraction is an amazing château, which can be seen from the other side of the river, as well as a medieval heart, which is mainly pedestrianised. The fortress of Chinon was established by Theobald I, Count of Blois, in the 10th century, though most of what you see today was actually built between the 10th and the 15th. It actually became a favourite of King Henry II of England in the 12th century and was used as a royal residence in the years that followed. Today you can visit for a small fee and you'll get amazing views onto the town. It's pretty fortified, and the entrance is actually a clock tower. In order to get to the fortress, you have two options because it's so high on the hill. You can either get an elevator from the main car park in town, or alternatively walk up this delightful cobbled lane and get views on the way up. So apparently, to get off her horse back in the day, Jeanne d'Arc actually stepped onto the side of a well, and it's been reconstructed by the Friends of Chinon right here. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more France travel content. See you next week.